Thank you very much, Chairman Boxer. Let me first say to my colleagues on the other side that as we solve the problem of carbon, I'm prepared to accept that there are going to be economic impacts on families that you are here to represent. And it's important that in our solution we address that concern, because that's a legitimate concern. What I can't accept is that the coal and oil jobs are the only jobs that are at stake in this discussion. Not when fishermen in Rhode Island are no longer catching winter flounder because Narragansett Bay is 3 or 4 degrees warmer in the winter. Not when the ski season in the Northeast and frankly all the way out to Utah is shortened. Not when foresters in Oregon and across the West are losing their jobs to the pine beetle and to the loss of having a vibrant natural forest. Not when we have the kind of impacts that we're seeing throughout the economy, and that's just the economic impacts. We also have health impacts in Rhode Island as asthma and other conditions increase. We are losing our state at the coastal verge. The houses at Roy Carpenter's Beach are falling into the ocean. I am not going to ignore those factors out of a desire to protect coal and oil jobs. I will work with you to a solution that solves our mutual concerns and helps those industries, but I'm not going to ignore this problem. The suggestion that climate change has stopped, I think, flies in the face of realistic evidence. And if you take a look at what's happening, and when that claim is made, it refers to surface atmospheric temperature, one specific measure. But if you actually look at a trend line plotted, which is a mathematical thing, it's not debatable, it's something that mathematicians do all the time. You plot a trend line through the data, and that's what you get. It's clearly going up. There's absolutely no legitimate dispute about that. What you can do is you can cherry pick, and that's what some of our friends are doing. You can pick different periods in that rising step process, and if you pick a certain period, it will look like it's flat through that period. But it doesn't last. The underlying trend is upward, and step after step after step is always up. There are, in this graph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 separate occasions when a denier could say that climate change isn't happening because it's gone flat, and every single time they would have been wrong. In light of that, I will ask Ms. McCarthy, on the spectrum between wisdom and recklessness, where would you put placing a bet that this evidence shows that climate change has stopped and that we should stop worrying about carbon?
Climate change is happening, and I've been worried for a while.
And one of the reasons that might explain this is when you look at what's actually happening in climate change, the carbon pollution is hitting our oceans pretty hard. 30% of the actual carbon goes into the oceans. And when it does, it changes it, and that's why Senator Merkley has talked about the wipeouts of the oyster hatches in his state, because acidified water came in which oysters could not build shells. 30% of the carbon, 93% of the heat. 93% of the heat. The atmosphere, 2.3% of the heat. So if anything changes just the tiniest bit in the ocean, imagine what effect that has in the atmosphere. Something is happening that creates that long-term trend oscillation that creates those steps that, if you cherry pick them, can create the false impression that this thing has stopped. But if you really look at the problem, you have to look at the role of the oceans. And I'm telling you, from the ocean state, it is very hard for me. Let me ask, does anybody on this panel doubt that the oceans are in fact warming, that sea levels are in fact rising, and that the ocean is in fact becoming more acidic? Indeed, is there any legitimate scientific debate on those 3 subjects? There is none, correct? There is none. The record reflects that there was unanimous agreement from the witnesses. One last question.
Record reflect, nobody spoke up.
There was, okay, well, let's go ahead and have them all say it if that's what the senator will insist on.
I don't believe on those points that you raised. Those are based on observations. There is
measurement, not theory, correct? And does everybody agree it's correct? Anybody speak now, or else I'm going to count you as yes. Trying to save time here.
And I defer to my colleagues who actually know something about the subject, so.
Oh, General Services Administration is not expert in this. I can appreciate that. Last question. A ton of carbon that's released from a power plant, does that do more or less harm than a ton of carbon that is released from a refinery, a kiln, or a boiler?
Same.
Same. So at some point, we should probably start looking at refineries, kilns, and boilers that release tens of thousands of tons of carbon as well.
Point taken, Senator.
Thank you.